else? Good morning, everyone. We just hit the admit all button, so folks are making their way in from the waiting room. We'll give it just a second before we get started. All right. Well, it is 9 o'clock and I have amazing co-hosts, so we're going to go ahead and get the PowerPoint presentation going. As usual, we'll go ahead and record on our end and get it posted once we have the edits taken care of. So I know somebody had made a request and I denied that, sorry, but we will post it once we get done. All right, so thank you for joining us for the YIC webinar session 39. This morning, of course, I'm your host, Amanda Charlesworth with the State Board of Education, and I'll do a quick mindfulness moment and introduce our presenters, which will be Cathy Davis. She will provide some suicide prevention updates. And then April Boone is going to tell us about the Granite School District Gang Prevention Program. All right, so this morning for our mindfulness, I'm very thankful I had chose a video because as you can hear, I have a little bit of a spring cold, so my voice is not that great. So we'll go ahead and take a few minutes and you're welcome to sit back and relax or do what works for you for a quick mindfulness moment. I hope that everyone gets centered and focused to get started this morning. There's, of course, all kinds of resources online for us to use like that. And with that, I'll go ahead and get us introduced to our presenters. So we have Cathy Davis from the State Board of Education. And Cathy has taught ecology, biology, and health sciences, which is anatomy and physiology, for over 18 years. For 7 of those years, Cathy taught school success to at-risk students. She's a small business owner and a graduate of the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses Program. Cathy has training in eating disorders, grief counseling, and trauma-informed care. She is certified with the American Associology, we're going to do all the words again. She is certified with the American Association for Suicidology in School Suicide Prevention Specialist. Cathy is a certified QPR trainer, Safe Talk trainer, Connect postvention trainer, youth mental health first aid trainer, and Prepare NASP trainer. She is serving as the current State Board of Education suicide prevention specialist and has been doing so since 2014. Cathy is also currently pursuing her PhD in educational leadership and policy at the University of Utah. Sorry about the mumble of words there, Cathy. All right. After Cathy, we'll hear from April Boone. And April's with the Granite School District, and she holds a Bachelor's of Science and a Master's in Education and Elementary Education, as well as Utah Educator licenses in early childhood education, elementary education, and school leadership. April has had the opportunity to be a general education classroom teacher in elementary, and she taught newcomers at the UNAMI. April will probably have to correct that. Welcome and Transition Center at Granite School District's education. What's that?
It's Tumaini.
Oh, Tumaini.
It's Swahili for hope.
Oh, fair. All right. Thank you. And April is also an instructional coach and a Check and Connect trainer. She's currently in the Department of Prevention and Student Placement at Granite School District as the Gang Prevention Check and Connect Mentor Coordinator. All right. Okay, so that is both of our presenters today. So let me stop my screen share and turn it over to Cathy.
Well, can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you great, Cathy.
And can you see my screen? It says Understanding Suicide, Putting It All Together.
I'm playing the multiple screen game. Yes, I can.
Okay, so I'm giving myself a round of applause because I did this. I'm so excited. So I am so grateful for this opportunity to speak to all of you. And I should have corrected my bio to read, instead of teaching at-risk kids, to at-promise kids, because I think that was a term that we used a long time ago, and it's not a term that really works for us. Just as we've changed the language of YIC, it's now youth in care. And so I'm going to talk to you today about just the evolution that's taken place with understanding suicide and what's that's all about. So I'm going to just go ahead and tell you what we're going to do today. First of all, we're going to talk about 5 things you need to know about suicide. And this comes from the Live On playbook that we launched about a year and a half ago on Instagram. And then we want to talk about dispelling myths about suicide. We want to kind of talk about suicidal ambivalence. It's like holding 2 things at the same time. And talk about the warning signs of suicide as invitations for us to intervene with the student and meet them where they are, hold space for them in that time of crisis, and get them to the referrals that they need to get them the help that they need. Then we're also going to talk about how to really have a meaningful conversation around suicide. This is getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. Having those conversations that are really critical, yet really difficult to have. And then finally, we're going to talk about an awareness of how to intervene with suicidal youth. And we wouldn't be, I would be amiss if I didn't give you resources that are available and ways that you can help with kids so that they can be help seekers. All right, so we are going to be talking about youth suicide. And for many of us, this can be a really activating topic. And what that means is it can activate a lot of emotions for us. It can activate past memories where maybe we're thinking of someone that died by suicide that was really close to us in our life. And just knowing that that healing journey from suicide loss takes a very, very long time. So I'm going to right away talk to you about the 988 line. And this is a way that you can get help for your mental health needs immediately. And it's kind of like there used to be a really long number that was hard to memorize, and we decided, you know, we need to make it really accessible for people when they're in crisis. So we changed it to 988. And so you can text that line, and you can also call that line. And so also, Amanda and Kelsey, if you wouldn't mind, if there are any questions that come up in the chat, feel free to interrupt me. And for those of you that are part of this webinar, if this becomes a little bit too challenging for you to hear, just step aside and give yourself a moment, a break. And I'm so glad we had that mindfulness moment prior to my presentation. All right, so what I'm gonna do for you is I actually was able to get the videos from the Live On Playbook. And this is it's a course that everyone can take. You don't have to have an Instagram account to do this course. And it just goes through the most important elements about suicide. And first and foremost, I want to go through the 5 things that you need to know about suicide. First of all, it's preventable. And I'm not going to say it's 100% preventable. I think a lot of people have said that in the past, and that can be really hurtful to those that said, well, if it's preventable, why did I lose my loved one? So people who consider suicide, they really don't want to die. They just want to stop feeling so hopeless and so overwhelmed. And if you've ever been in just severe emotional pain, you just want that to end. And it's by having open conversations that we can help strengthen someone's desire to live. And that's what we're really wanting to do. So the next thing is we're going to talk about how we talk about suicide matters. Just like I talked about how we used to talk about students that were really struggling as students at risk, we now have changed that to students at promise. At risk doesn't have that hope-filled voice, and we want to really talk openly about mental health so that people can feel safer getting help. And it's really important to approach this topic with empathy. And so we do this by how we talk about things and the language that we use. So we say died by suicide instead of committed suicide. And how many of you have heard the term committed suicide? And when someone that's a survivor of suicide loss hears that, it really comes from the whole history of suicide for generations and generations. It used to be considered a sin and actually against the law to die by suicide. And so it's not really about wanting to die. It's about wanting to avoid this severe emotional pain, like this pain that feels like it's never going to end. So instead of saying committed suicide, where we attach committed to like a crime, those kinds of things, we want to just say died by suicide. Another one I want to point out is we talk, if our students have a mental health diagnosis, lots of times we'll say, this student, for instance, if the student's name is Sam is bipolar. There's so much more to Sam than Sam's mental health diagnosis. That's not all that Sam is about. Sam is living with bipolar disorder. And so try not to say that. And also, we don't say Sam is suicidal. We say Sam is having thoughts of suicide. So the next is going to be a video. This is my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Michael Staley. He is the suicide researcher in the state of Utah. And we are so fortunate to have him as our suicide researcher. And he's one of the leading researchers in the nation. So he's going to talk to you a little bit about just the 5 purposes of that, why we talk about suicide and what we talk about.
My name is Michael Staley, and I'm the Suicide Prevention Research Coordinator with the state of Utah. Women, men, LGBTQ people, physicians, waiters and construction workers, religious and non-religious people, Young and old and everyone in between, anyone can experience thoughts of suicide, but some groups of people are at higher risk. Veterans and service members in Utah are twice as likely to die by suicide than their non-veteran or service member peers. Native Americans have a rate of suicide that exceeds that of any other racial group. LGBTQ people report seriously considering or attempting suicide far more often than their heterosexual peers. And elderly men have one of the highest rates of suicide of any other group.
And I really like getting that introduction of who are the high risk groups that we really need to pay attention to. And I think the group that Michael highlighted are queer students, are students that identify as being lesbian, gay, transgender, bisexual. And so we really need to pay attention to all of the different things that are happening in their lives as well. So yeah, lots of people want to just, say that there's like one cause for suicide, and it's so multifactorial, it's so complex. It's not one single thing or event. And suicidal thoughts are really a result of everything that's really involved in your life, like the environmental, physical, emotional, just the stressors. I like to say life is so daily. It's what happens on a day-to-day basis. So it's really hard to understand how they feel unless you've really experienced the suicidal thoughts to know what that's all about. Then the fifth thing is we really want to talk about how you are not alone. If you or someone you care about has had thoughts of suicide, you're not alone. And I think suicidal thoughts are more common than we realize. Lots of people experience these thoughts at some point in their lives, and most go on to lead healthy, fulfilling lives. And also, we want to make sure that you know that there's hope, and with help, you'll feel better again. Okay, so this slide just goes through the 5 things that we want you to know about suicide: that it is preventable, how we talk about it matters, it affects all of us, and it's really complex, and you're not alone. Okay, suicide myths. We're going to do a Zoom poll. So, Amanda, if you'll help me out with this.
Yes, friend, I am launching the poll now. So hopefully everyone should see that in a pop-up screen. And if not, there's a little menu across the bottom of your Zoom where you can open those polls. Cathy, are you seeing it on your end?
I am. I'm seeing it on my end.
All right, we'll give you a good 30 seconds or minute here, and then we'll close the poll and share the results. All right, looks like the majority have had a chance to answer. We'll give it just another second or two here. Go ahead and end the poll now, and let's share those results. All right. Cathy, is that visible?
Yeah, I think so. All right. Oh, wow, this is great. We are going to go ahead and go through all of these. yeah, and so we'll give you the answers to all of these as I go through the rest of the slides.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and stop sharing so we can see your slide there.
All right.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
Okay, so the first question I think we talked about is that no one can stop a suicide. It's inevitable. There's really more myths and facts about suicide than these, but these have been chosen. And the questions that I chose are the ones that really are the ones that we see the most. Preventing suicide is as good an outcome as we can hope for, because if we don't know if a suicide attempt will lead to death, you know, and also we also need to know too that if we can prevent a suicide by restricting access to lethal means, like if there's someone that's suicidal and has firearms at their house, if we are able to lock up those firearms, make sure that those are not available, not accessible, that person is a lot safer and not as likely to be able to use a lethal means. So the next myth is asking about a person about suicide is going to make them angry and increase the risk of suicide. This is a myth that I see all the time, and especially with folks that say, you know, we just don't want to talk about suicide, because if we talk about suicide, it's going to plant that idea in their head. So that's something that we realize, that if we ask someone directly about it, it's really going to lower their anxiety, open up the communication, and really lower that risk of a suicide attempt. So myth 3 is, it says that only experts can prevent suicide. This is why this training is so important, because what I want to do is raise your awareness to what to look out for with the youth, the adolescents, the kiddos that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, because anyone can help prevent the tragedy of suicide. And then I think this is one where I think a lot of folks struggle with, because they think that people considering suicide keep their plans to themselves. But the reality is most people will consider suicide. They communicate their intent sometime during the week of preceding their attempt. It might be direct, or it might be kind of indirect. So you have to kind of look for all of those signs. And then the last one, those who talk about suicide do not do it. The fact is, people who talk about suicide may try or even complete an act of self-destruction. And then once a person decides to complete suicide, there's nothing anyone can do to stop them. It's the most preventable kind of death, and almost any positive action may save a life. And that's why we talk a lot about how it's so important to, you know, if someone's at risk of suicide, to make sure that you do the means safety counseling, and you make sure that they don't have access to lethal means. All right, we're going to show one more video. So I've got a few videos, but I chose these specifically because they really touch on a lot of, you know, questions that we have when we're talking about this. So this comes from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention.
So there's a myth that if you ask somebody about suicide, you might put the thought into their head. And actually, there's at least 4 studies now refuting that. In fact, the best way to keep a teenager from killing themselves is to ask directly, are you thinking of killing yourself? When faced with a child who's having thoughts of suicide, I would advise anyone to tell them first to be as compassionate as possible. Say, I'm sorry you're feeling so bad. How can I help? And to try, you know, people wonder if kids are resilient, or they think kids are resilient, and resiliency really needs to be fostered. It does lie in every one of us, but sometimes it needs to be fostered. So in our school systems, for example, we teach reading and writing and math, but we don't teach kids how to be resilient. How do you handle the ups and downs of everyday life? And if we could give kids coping strategies to handle those and to bear what feels unbearable to them. And so I'd want to say it feels really bad now, but it's not always going to feel this way. And how can we help you get through this crisis? So when someone's struggling with thoughts of suicide and you ask in a very caring and compassionate way, it opens the door. It tells them you're concerned about their safety, and then they most likely will talk about it.
I really love that explanation. And I'm going to ask you a question and ask for your feedback in the chat. So I'm addressing mentors, and you have one of the most incredible opportunities to help kids. And so first of all, just write in the chat, do you think the number one thing that your students that you mentor are struggling with today? And then Amanda, if you'll just read out a couple out of the chat, just like the number 1, 2, 3 things that the students are really struggling with, that they just want to give up and avoid.
Right. So already we have bullying,
Okay.
self-esteem,
Okay.
confidence in themselves or home, which I think ties in, rejection.
Oh, absolutely. Fantastic.
This one hits me. Friendlessness,
Okay.
rejection from family and friends,
Right.
lots of fitting in, loss of hope.
And it's really interesting. How many of you mentioned something about I'm struggling with my math, or I'm struggling with getting my assignments in? What were the topics that just about everyone was talking about? Were they related to academics, or were they related to something else?
Emotions came right in.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so this is why I think I want to be an advocate for addressing social and emotional needs. Because if you don't address the social and emotional needs, how do you expect to have academic success? And so one of the things that I want to talk about is the warning signs and suicidal ambivalence. And this is where I call the life side and the death side, both present at the same time. Okay, so this next video is Doug Thomas, who is a dear, dear friend of mine. He used to be with the Department of Substance Abuse and Mental Health, and he's now working for IHC, but he's going to talk to you a little about some of the things that you touched on when you were in the chat.
Hi, my name is Doug Thomas. I'm a Community Health Director with Intermountain Healthcare. Today I will be talking about recognizing and addressing the warning signs for suicide. Some of the warning signs may include significant changes in mood or behavior, such as withdrawing from friends, family, or activities that people used to enjoy. Perhaps people mention trouble sleeping or unmanaged physical or emotional pain. It's also good to pay attention when someone has major life events like a relationship change, job loss, or a change in a financial situation. Even positive life changes can be stressful. Staying connected during these times can make all the difference. Sometimes you may not see any changes in mood or behavior, but someone might talk about suicide. Don't dismiss talk of suicide as an empty threat or attention-seeking behavior. For many people, it's much deeper than that. Taking it seriously allows them to open up about what's going on. Hi,
So I think what's so crucial, if you go back into the chat, you have to show up for the kids that you mentor and realize that that problem they're experiencing, it could be so unmanageable that they don't see a way out. They don't see it ever ending, and they don't see a solution. And so that's where we come in to be that person that has that student's back to say, you know what, you can get through this. I will be there by your side to help you get through this. And here's some other additional comments that Doug has to say for you. So I'll add on to his comments.
Let's talk through the warning signs that McKay exhibited in this example. The first warning sign was not hearing from a friend that you had regular communication with, so make time to reach out. The second warning sign was that you knew they had a breakup, which is a major life change. You knew it could potentially be really hard on them. The third warning sign is when they mention that they aren't sleeping well. The fourth warning sign, they try to push you away and tell you not to worry about them. Worrying about burnout warning sign culminates with them saying that they wish they could fall asleep and not wake up. In this example, the friend kept pushing for more information and showing genuine care and concern. They took initiative to connect via text and then reach out in person when it was needed.
So what this illustration is all about is when you're checking in with your students and you go over everything, there may be a life event that's particularly troubling for them. And, you kind of have to kind of unpack that a little bit and see how that is affecting the rest of their life. And this next example is talking about that check-in process that you do. So this is McKay. I don't know if you can see that on the thing. It says, I haven't heard from you in a while. You good? Yeah, sorry for not responding. Been going through some stuff. What's up? Just tired. Haven't been sleeping well. Don't worry about me. I heard about your breakup with Alex. That sounds really tough. Do you want to talk about it? I don't want to unload all my problems on you. I'll just bring you down with me. Breakups suck. I'm sorry you've been going through that. Yeah, I'm so tired of all this. I wish I could fall asleep forever. And want some company? I'll be over in 30 minutes with pizza. Pepperoni, okay? Anyway, so the purpose of all of this, and when we did this training, we wanted to show a conversation via text because we have a lot of our students that are texting, and sometimes they're texting late into the night. But let's go back to this suicidal ambivalence, because I think this is something that I have seen throughout the years with teenagers, because they want to live, but they also feel that desire of not wanting to live. So it's common with those that have thoughts of suicide. And this ambivalence is kind of different for different folks, but the gist of it is in this slide where you have the life side. And the life side is that part of the student that has the ties to life. They have a hope for the future. They feel connected. They have those times of comfort. They can, do the self-care that they need. But then you also have this death side, and it can feel conflicting, and it causes those feelings of fear, feeling like they're a burden, that internalized stigma, feelings of shame. Right now we are in the graduation season. And I know a lot of you are probably working with seniors, and they probably have a lot of credit recovery to do, but we've got to always be with them on that side of hope. Because if they there's going to be a lot of evidence to support why they shouldn't keep trying, but why they should give up, in other words. But they need to feel that life side, because in this next slide, and when I created this slide, I wanted you to feel that students really feel like sometimes they're going through this really dark tunnel. And I don't know if you've been through a really long tunnel. It feels really hopeless and really scary. And you have to just keep telling yourself, there is a light. It is going to end. We are going to emerge out of this tunnel. But sometimes when kiddos have these negative feelings, they become so overwhelming that they can't see that light at the end of the tunnel. It really is hard to access the life side. And so you get this mood congruent memory. So these are the memories that they get. Like when they feel this certain emotion, it's really easy to access memories where you felt that same emotion. So, like, for instance, I think one of the issues that was in the chat was bullying. Another one was maybe loneliness and not having friends. You know, I think when a student like experiences loneliness and they go to the lunchroom and they don't know where to sit and they say, well, I'll just sit by myself, or, you know, a student that you're just really trying to get back into attending classes again, or maybe they've just been, you know, chronically absent for a long, long time, and that just felt safe to them. But at the same time, it's that avoidance behavior just reinforces all those negative thoughts that they have, feeling trapped, no way out, hopeless, helpless. So, and when this happens, it's kind of like this cascading event where they feel like they're a burden to loved ones, they're trapped, no way out. It kind of leads to emotional pain that we call a psych ache. So it's kind of like the emotional pain just hurts. It becomes almost unbearable, so that death is seen as the only way out of pain, because it's that pain is just so unbearable. So hopefully this gives you a different perspective. This is more of a perspective that comes out of, you know, clinicians that work with folks that are suicidal. This comes out of my 10 years working in this field. And so when we ask about suicide, we really don't want you to be, I mean, it may be really hard the first time you ask about suicide, but what if you didn't ask about suicide? So what you need to say is, it may be uncomfortable, but this is a conversation I have to have. So here's some tips for asking this question. So some of the things you can say is like, if you're really like concerned, make sure that you're in a private setting with your student. And if you have a question, just say, ask the question. And here's some of the things you can say. And if that person's reluctant, be persistent. It takes a lot of kids time to process. And sometimes I like to say, listening is not the same as waiting to speak. So when you listen, you need to really listen and be in that space for that, where that student is your entire focus. So, and I talk about this private setting because when students struggle with emotions, and I see this with both males and females, but I think males especially have a hard time naming what's going on. And so one thing that you can do is just don't give advice, just allow that person to talk freely. And give yourself plenty of time. I've been with students where I've waited for like a minute, 2 minutes. We've just sat in silence, because it's really hard to, you know, if you've never really talked about this before, it's hard to you know, open up that conversation. So have your resources handy. So this is actually a slide that comes off of my deck from QPR. And the reason I wanted to use this slide is it's really helpful. And I'm going to get these to you, Amanda, so that you can get some resources to your mentors so that they have some resources ready. So that you know how you can give the students the resources they need. So it's really not how you ask a question. It's really, it's how you ask the question is less important than you ask it. So in QPR, they say, you first ask the question, and then you persuade, and then you refer. So you could do either a direct or an indirect approach to ask that question, and then identify questions to avoid. And I'll go through that in a minute. then how you persuade someone to stay alive. And then the referral is how and to whom will you refer the person you just helped. So when we go into the question, there's kind of a lot of different ways to do this. But what I tend to like to do is you just kind of lead into it, but I'm really direct when I ask the question. So you can say, have you been unhappy lately? Have you been very unhappy lately? Or have you been so very unhappy lately that you've been thinking about ending your life? Do you ever wish you could go to sleep and never wake up? And that's something that kids will say. They'll say, you know, life would be so much better if I had never been born. And that's something that I've heard. Directly, this is a way to do it. You know, when people are as upset as you seem to be, they sometimes wish they were dead. I'm wondering if you're feeling that way too, or you look pretty miserable. I wonder if you're thinking about suicide. And then are you thinking about killing yourself? So if you look at these two ways, I mean, these are examples, but it really has to come from your voice, the way it would sound coming from you. So coming from me, I'm one of these, and Amanda will let you know this. I'm one of these people that is like a Hallmark commercial. I like to tell people that I really care about them, and they need to know that, you know, that there's that I'm going to be able to hold space for them. And I really strive to be empathetic every single day. So I will just say, you know, I really care about you, and you've just had a really tough time. And some of the things you've been telling me make me worried. And so I want to ask you this. Have you been thinking about suicide? And so I mean, and I ask it differently every time, depending on my situation. So there are ways not to ask the suicide question. So, and this just comes from, it's a difficult topic to deal with. And so sometimes people want to just get off the hook, and they'll say, and there's always a gasp there, like, you're not thinking of killing yourself, are you? Or another alternative would be, you wouldn't do anything stupid, would you? And when I do trainings, I'll oftentimes ask somebody to say this and ask the question in their most dramatic voice. And then another one is, suicide's a dumb idea. Surely you're not thinking about suicide. So these are the ways not to ask the suicide question. And when you're in that situation with someone that you're really concerned about, and you're going to ask them if they're thinking about suicide or if they want to kill themselves, you're not going to be passing judgment on a person thinking about suicide. And we really want them. This is really the way. Asking this way is in a way telling them, I really don't want you to tell me the truth. I just want to ask this so I don't have to worry about it anymore. You have to be concerned about what that student is dealing with. So you need to be what I call a steady presence. And this is a term that I have adopted from Dr. Lisa Damour. And this is a video I'm going to show, and it's really tiny. So you're just going to have to listen to the words that she says.
When kids come our way to tell us they are upset, overwhelmingly, all they want and all they need is for us to listen and be empathic. If one of my daughters is telling me she's upset about something, I'll picture she's a reporter and I'm her editor, and she's reading me the article of her distress, and that when she gets to the end of the article, I just have to produce the headline. Like, I have to have listened so intently that I can distill it and summarize it and add nothing and give it back to her. That is overwhelmingly what teenagers are looking for. And so often what they get instead is advice. Curiosity plus empathy, or just empathy, is, I would say, overwhelmingly the most effective and also wanted response when teenagers come our way with their distress.
All right, in the chat, I want you to think of an example where you really had an effective, session with someone where you were a steady presence. So what does it mean as a mentor to be a steady presence for the students that you mentor? So just write some phrases in the chat. How can you be a steady presence?
Got non-judgmental
Okay.
by being connected to them,
Yeah.
following through on commitments, tied right
I
to
love
that,
that.
being consistent.
Can I count on you? They need to know that they can count on you.
Showing up and showing that you care.
I love it. That's great.
Empathetic listening, putting yourself in their shoes, letting them know you will always come back.
Wow, I love that. Okay. These are my last few slides. And as I go through these slides, we're going to talk about not just you as being one of those caring adults in that young person's life, but the whole community. We've got to change the whole narrative about suicide and help seeking and realizing that life is a struggle and it's really hard and it really takes all of us working together to problem solve and to cope.
Hello, my name is Bené Larson, Prevention Director at NAMI Utah. Parents often know or they can sense when their child's struggling. If you see warning signs such as talking about death, wanting to die, hopelessness, and changes in behavior, it's always a good idea to check in and ask how your child's doing. Sometimes we see these warning signs and sometimes we don't. If you're concerned, it's important to ask directly about suicide. Research shows that just asking can provide relief and reduce the likelihood of an attempt. You will not put the thought into their head. Youth suicide makes up 6% of all suicides here in Utah. It's important to have open conversations now so that as they progress into adulthood, they are comfortable talking about their mental health.
And so I think that's really the key, is just creating just creating the whole idea that it's okay to ask for help. You know, that really we all need to seek help at some point in life. And so there's a lot of resources, and I'm going to leave about 5 minutes for your questions. But as I go through these resources, I want you to just jot these down if you don't know about them. And the one that I think is first and foremost for all of us is Safe UT. Now, Safe UT started with our students, but then it's expanded to first responders. And I just recently became a first responder myself. I am a certified crisis worker for the 988 line. That took me about a semester's worth course and lots of paperwork and lots of tests, but I got that certification because it was important enough to me to be able to, you know, be there for people in a crisis situation. And then it's also there for National Guard. And in this next slide, there's another line that I want to talk to you about, and it's called the Trevor Project Lifeline. And the Family Acceptance Project is also another really great way to start having that conversation with your students that identify as LGBTQ, and that if they want to talk specifically to someone that has lived experience, that understands where they're coming from, that there is the Trevor Project Lifeline for them. 988 again, and Safe UT. Some other things locally that we have are NAMI, and you saw Bené Larson talking about that. And that's the website for NAMI, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, 211 And lots of times I recommend having students download some apps. The one I always recommend is the Virtual Hope Box. And it's a way where kids can, upload photos in this app. It's got lots of distracting activities, word searches, that kind of thing. Not okay, and then a suicide safety plan. And then I think the way that we message is super important. And this is part of the campaign that we did. And they consulted me on this, and they said, I want you to have, someone that represents you that says it's okay to talk about your mental health. Sometimes it only takes one conversation to make the difference. And really, I think all of you as mentors have some really critical conversations. And, I think that that's a real incredible space that you have, that you hold for your students. I know when I worked exclusively with kids that were really struggling, I did that for 7 years. I used to go to court with them. I used to, if they were in DT, I would show up. I've had lots of students on suicide watch. I had lots of kids with POs. I worked with pregnant teens, but they always knew that they held a special place in my heart, and that I really cared about them, and that really makes a difference. This last video is Dr. Staley again, and then I'm going to entertain your questions.
Utah is known for its radical hospitality. To offer a helping hand when someone needs it is the essence of being a Utahn. No crisis, no trouble is too big, even if we don't have all of the answers. And so you have a role to play in suicide prevention, in your home, in your community, in your state, and in yourself. If you've watched this video to this point, you're already well on your way to being a suicide prevention advocate. Keep going. Learn the warning signs of suicide, what to do if these thoughts are serious, how to be present with someone who has attempted suicide, and to care for those around you who tragically lost someone to suicide. Everyone has a role to play in suicide prevention. Everyone. Utah.
Okay, so this is my contact information. I have just an hour with you folks, but before we get into the questions, I know that you all work in different school districts, and different school districts are going to have different policies with regards to suicide, asking the question, the referral process. Know the referral process at your school so that you understand, what do I do if I have a kid that is really thinking about suicide? The law states that when you ask the question, and once that you ask that question, you have to notify parents if there is suicidality. And then in your case, you'll probably refer to a school counselor or the school social worker or someone that you work in tandem with. And then depending on the situation, if it's a situation where that student is in foster care or some other situation, you'll have to navigate that. But this is my contact information. It's my best way to get a hold of me is probably with my email. And then if you call that number, it just leaves a voicemail for me as well. So any questions or anything I can talk about in the last couple minutes?
Now that I found my mute button, you are welcome to come off mute and just ask the question or pop it in the chat, whatever works. And then real quick, while you're thinking, as part of the follow-up, I'll make sure I include all the links that Cathy shared with us today in the follow-up email so that you all just have those right available to you. And then just to reiterate what Cathy said, there are district policies and plans in place. So if you're not aware of those, I highly encourage you to talk to your mentor coordinator or director to get that resource mapping to add that to your resource mapping for what you have on hand.
And I just want to just applaud all of you and just validate the incredible work that you're doing for students. It really is an amazing privilege that you have to just be there to show up for that student. I like to use the term that I've heard a lot about in 12-step programs and everything. You suit up and you show up. And so it's not always going to be easy, but it's really, really worth it.
And then I just had another random thought come to mind. So there's also resources for you all. Cathy and I had developed a self-assessment survey when COVID first started, and we were all feeling some stress and having some issues. So don't hesitate to reach out to me or Cathy if we can help you guys as well.
Absolutely. All right, I'm going to go ahead. Shall I just go ahead and stop sharing that?
Yeah, I think you can do that for us. And I'm
Okay.
not seeing any comments in the chat other than a thank you and that the information was very valuable. So I appreciate you so much, Cathy. You know that I would have you present all the time if I could. So I think this is about the 4th time Cathy has come back and shared resources with us. So and another comment that it was uplifting voice and she could listen to you all day. So thank you so much, Cathy. All right, with that, let me get my screen share started for April. Hang on just a moment, friends.
Cathy, before you leave, this is Jeff Straley in the Salt Lake City School District. I'm a district mentor there, and I deal with kids K through 12. I have a little 3rd grader who has talked openly to teachers and counselors about ways to kill herself and different things because of some tragic abuse that she suffered, I think. At any rate, do you have any advice for speaking with really young kids about suicide?
Jeff, I'm so glad that you brought that up because, I think just especially since COVID, we've had the kids that, used to be able to navigate the storm, but they really can't navigate it anymore. So if you think back 3 years, if you think back on our 3rd graders, they were like kindergartners during COVID. And if you've got someone that's got parents that are really stressed out, or maybe they're living with uncle or grandparents or someone, it's really tough. So this is something where you're going to have to never worry alone, is what I always say, Jeff. You've got to get some other people on board to help you with this situation, because you've got to realize that's going to take a long time to, first of all, you got to do some serious assessments, and they're what we call risk assessments to see are they at really high risk for suicide at this moment in time. It may be something where you want to make a referral if they haven't been if child find hasn't taken place where they do the assessment for special education. That can give them additional resources. So it may lead that they just get one resource until they get wraparound services. There's a service that I'm going to tell you about, Jeff, that you can, if you're in Salt Lake, you can access this. It's called, it's the Mobile Crisis Outreach Team. If you've got a situation where the kid's really in crisis right then, you need some crisis workers to help you out. And then there's also the Stabilization and Mobile Response Team. And that is out of YIC, and they can actually work with that family and give them support. And depending on what you're dealing with in your district, there may be some ways to tie them into some mental health supports. But at that young tender age, they may not know what they're saying. They don't understand the finality of suicide, and they just want their pain to end. And so they just talk about this, not realizing that suicide ends their life. Does that mean they want to end their pain, but they don't realize ending their life is ending their life?
Yeah, that makes sense. What was the name of that second team? The Stabilization?
Yeah, Stabilization and Mobile Response. I'm going to give all these resources to Amanda for you to send out with this follow-up email.
Great. Okay, thank you very much.
You bet.
Appreciate that.
And I'm gonna drop off, and if there's additional questions, Amanda, just go ahead and forward them to me, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you for the time, Kathy. I know your
Oh,
schedule is
you bet.
probably absolutely full, so thank you.
All right, take care, folks. Be well.
All right. Let's get the screen share started for April. And now we will talk about gang prevention.
Yay! It's my favorite topic. So as I'm April, you all know, because I got introduced by Amanda, I have a couple of other people with me that I want to introduce you to as well. One is Sarah Bruner. Sarah Bruner is here in the room with me. She coordinates the Check and Connect mentors from prevention with me and will be helping with the presentation today. And then we also have on like the 12th row over, Keelan Brooks. If you want to wave Keelan so people can see you, you can. If you don't, you don't have to. But we asked Keelan to come today because he is one of our mentors. And I always think it's nice to have someone who is boots on the ground and having real experiences and knows what it's like to work directly with the kids. So that's why I asked Keelan to join us today. Go ahead, Amanda. Thank you. So I just wanted to put this slide, not that you need to memorize anyone's name or anything like that. I just wanted you to know the layout of what we're doing in Granite School District as we work through gang prevention. We do use Check and Connect as our mentoring method for our students who are gang involved. And we have a few mentors who are dedicated to that gang prevention. Many of the mentors in the high schools have started at the high schools as Check and Connect mentors, seeing all sorts of kids. And then the schools just saw their value and how well they were doing with our gang active youth and asked if they could have those people participate in their faculties full time. And so we split costs with them. And we have opportunity to send mentors out to various areas in our district. These are areas that seem to be higher impacted by gang activity than other areas in our district, but something we have learned without any doubt is that gang activity is happening at Skyline, it's happening at Olympus, just like it's happening in West Valley at Hunter or at Kearns. It doesn't matter where the kids are, there is gang activity to be dealt with and to talk about and to buoy our kids up to prevent them against joining those gangs. We also wanted to talk a little bit at this time about how we make the selection of mentors. We do go through an interview process, which is a pretty typical process that everyone is probably very familiar with. But one thing we do look for when we're interviewing is we're looking for people who can fit with the kids' needs. So we try to have a big variety within our mentors. We've got all sorts of ethnicities. We have different orientations as far as like members of the LGBTQIA community. We have people who have been in gangs previously, who've had experience with family members in gangs, people who have struggled with substance use and things like that. So we try to make sure that we have a wide variety of people on our team. And we've had wonderful success with this. But I wanted to invite Keelan to share with us. Keelan, please, why is it that you wanted to become a mentor in this area?
Good morning, Keelan Brooks, Granite School District, Taylorsville High School. I became a mentor actually because I was one of the kids, that grew up with two parents that were incarcerated. As I came up through junior high, elementary, and high school, I had those male figures, coaches that actually took that part when mentors were not a thing at the time, took the time to kind of groom me and make sure that I saw, how to do things the right way as far as school and in life. So I kind of felt like it was a responsibility of mine to do the same thing. Once I actually was in the military for 22 years. And during my military time, it was the same thing as far as grooming and mentoring soldiers. So once I retired, I took this opportunity to actually be able to give back to kids and be a mentor.
Thank you, Keelan. That's perfect. We're so grateful for him and his abilities. A lot of our mentors bring these kinds of experiences to our group, including a couple more retired military. We also have some retired police, and we have found a great benefit in finding people who have a lot of life experience and have retired from those first careers and are able to give what they've got to our youth. Next slide, please. So this is how we're set up as far as leadership and coordinating our efforts. Jared is our director for our department for prevention and student placement. Carol is our associate director, and she's who Sarah and I report to directly in order to go through these efforts. And then our advocate and mentor coordinators, that's Sarah and I. So my background is education. I've been working in the schools for a good long time, and I'm able to be a trainer for Check and Connect, which I love doing those trainings. It's so much fun. And so I'm more of the theory when something is going awry with one of the kids and mentors get that squishy feeling and they're just not quite sure where to go or what to do. I'm the person that problem solves when things like that are happening and helps work with mentors as we work through these situations. Sarah's background is from the business world, and so that is awesome because there's no way that I would efficiently run grant money by myself without Sarah. It's just been a wonderful experience to do that. And then another big role that Sarah plays in supporting our mentors is with paperwork and making sure that we're getting all of the data in so that we can justify how we're using that grant money and justify the decisions that we're making for our kids with the methods that we use and things like that. So, and then we also have a really important relationship with Granite School District Police. One thing that we do use our USBE grant funding is to fund an officer. So we have a detective who is a Granite School District detective, and he is assigned to the Metro Gang Unit. His name is Detective Mitchner. And we meet with him once a week on Wednesdays. All of the gang prevention mentors come together. Detective Mitchner comes into that meeting, and we just have an informational meeting where we share information back and forth. And I think it took, gosh, less than 2 weeks before someone said, wait, was that a white Ford selling drugs in your parking lot? Because we had that car in our parking lot too. And then a third high school was like, yeah, that car sold in our neighborhood too. So it took less than 2 weeks to realize that the communication was what was going to be absolutely key to our efforts, because we had a lot of wheels going, but they weren't working together before we started having that meeting. And so since then, it's really evolved into other things as well. Detective Mitchner, as well as the mentors, now we've reached out to even other districts because we've seen, like, we have a big influx of kids who go to Murray and Murray district kids who come back to us for high school. And so it's been really neat to see all of those things.
And one of the things that's been so helpful is because what's happening at one school is also happening at other schools. So it's key in these meetings for our mentors to collaborate and also to share what is going on, because these kids are going from one school to the next school. They're trespassing. I'm sure people have noticed that if they're in school districts. That's one thing that's common. The other key thing is our gang prevention advocates are working very close with the SROs. And that is a huge benefit because they not only work with getting the information to our Granite police, to Detective Mitchner, but they're able to work with there are so many different law enforcement officers that are involved. Granite has, where we do have a lot of UPD, they're all run a little different. Each one is separate. It's its own separate entity. And so it's key to have a member of law enforcement be able to communicate with other members of law enforcement and have that open communication. So it's just that communication is such a key piece in all of this because things are always moving and changing.
Mm. And those meetings they are so fun. I've never been in a meeting before where I feel like you just talk in circles round and round this table, and it can be so confusing, but when you're done, you're completely exhausted and you feel like you really actually do kind of have a handle on the situation, and you know exactly who to go to when something comes up, because various expertise and abilities have started to show in our mentors. And so it's been really neat thing to see people develop in ways like that. So next slide, please. Thank you, Amanda. So we wanted to also talk a little bit about student selection. Of course, there's House bills and things that are always going to come up that we're always going to need to be considering when we talk about the kids that we serve. Our rubric specifically, we talk about the students having gang involvement, substance use violation, and then having violations for safe and drug-free school policies. So some of the things we're looking for is students who are feeling like they are alone, students who all of a sudden had all of these plans that they wanted to do and they were successful with, and all of a sudden they don't care about anything else, or they've had major behavior changes. When we have kids come through, so part of what I get to do, which is really nice, is that when a student does have a safe school violation and they come through our office for an intake, I get to help do those. And a lot of those kids end up to be our gang involved youth. So maybe I don't work so much with the drug violations. Paul does those intakes, but when it comes to the safe school violations, so kids committing assault, sexual harassment, things like that, I get to weapons violations, I get to talk with those kids. And one thing that has really impacted me as I have talked to them is that they don't use their agency. I think they are so low in the self-efficacy that they have, that a lot of what they tell me is someone else told me to do this, or I did this because my friend asked me to, or so-and-so said this, and so obviously I had to reply in this way. And so what strikes me is that our kids do so many things for other people. It's a wonderful skill. It's a beautiful thing to want to do something for your friends. And even though it's being channeled in an inappropriate way, or a way that's difficult at the time, it's been amazing. That's one thing that has really struck out to me. And so that's something that I specifically look for a lot, is are they able to advocate for themselves? Because I think a lot of our kids who can't advocate for themselves run a higher risk of succumbing to gang recruitment. So that's just one of the things we look at when we're looking at our at-risk kids. We're also looking at their friends or family members who are gang involved, whether or not their parents are supportive of drug use and gang activity and things like that. And then, of course, we have referrals from school staff and other people. We've had kids refer themselves because their friends have a mentor. They'll show up to the mentor office and be like, hey, can I get in on this? We did a back to school night where we had a student come up to our table and was like, I think my friend just joined a gang, and referred her BFF to work with our mentors. So the kids are starting to be really aware that we are there. And we talk a lot about how we are positive supports only. And so they are not afraid to come and talk with us. We also get a lot of referrals, and this is something we love. We have also Check and Connect mentors in YIC in our district. And so we get to work with them a lot, talk to them about students who are being released from their program and make room for them to come into the prevention side of Check and Connect and make sure that they're not losing those services. But it's nice to be able to hear about their backgrounds from their YIC mentors so that they don't have a gap in the support that they so desperately need. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we've thought a lot about why gang prevention needs to happen in the schools and not necessarily outside agencies. Not to say that it shouldn't happen in outside agencies. That came out awkward. Anybody who wants to work in gang prevention is welcome. Please do it. We're not gonna ever deny anyone an opportunity to work in that field with us, because it definitely takes the entire village. But some of the benefits that we have in the school system with working with our kids is that we have access to them in a place where they feel safe. We do have truancy issues in our kids for sure. They are really struggling with truancy. And we probably spend more time on the kids who are truant trying to hunt them down than we do with the kids who are in the schools on a consistent basis. But when they're there, we do have a safe place for them to be. And it's easier for us to track them down, I think, sometimes than outside agencies, because someone typically is going to register their kid for school. And so we have an idea of where to start looking. We get additional support from school staff, which has been amazing. We've had school staff, we've had some people, like one of our counselors sent an email to the mentor saying that he was going to go the rounds with me because he didn't like how things were going. And so let's go. And we were going to have that fight. And so I called him. I actually went over there in person and said, I just wanted you to see my face, because you keep telling the mentor that you're going to call and have this big chat with me, but you haven't called. And I thought maybe if you knew who I was, you would call me and talk to me. And he is now one of the biggest supporters of our program. He understands the referral process really well. He brings kids to MTSS all the time to have them evaluated to see if they should be a part of Check and Connect and the mentoring that we're doing for gang prevention. And so it's been really great to have these additional supports. Plus, the social workers have access to resources that I don't always have access to right away. And they have a different way of thinking about things, because my background is teaching and education. And so it's really nice to have partnerships with the school staff and to have their support. And but that one place maybe had a rocky start, but it's been a fantastic situation for us.
And some of the things with the resources is a lot of the areas, there may be something specific to that particular area, or, you know, that geographic location, that the school staff may know more resources available. A lot of times the mentors start knowing in that area what is available. So that's one of the things that is very helpful.
Mm-hmm. And I think the other big thing about being in the school is that we do access those outside agencies as well. So I know when our students struggle with something specific and the mentors get stuck, and I think, oh gosh, I'm stuck with that too. We do a lot of Salt Lake County Youth Services referrals and make sure that our kids are being provided for. And it's nice also to have that consistency of care in a school where we're noticing the patterns that are going on, and we can communicate with various departments depending on what is needed with the pattern that a kid is showing. And the last thing I want to talk about that is we have access to the paperwork and the data that's being collected. That's so huge for us. I look at that all the time, because we're trying to look not only for the efficiency of our mentors, but we're looking at the patterns that the kids are showing, and are they making their goals? Are they setting the same goals over and over? And where are we seeing success from them? So it's been great. Next slide, please. So these are some things that we do because we do feel like both prevention and intervention is important. Our department is called prevention. So that is a main focus for us. But as we start working with our kids who are at risk for gang activity, we noticed that we had kids who weren't just at risk for gang activity, but were already fully involved. And so these are some of the things that we do for the different areas. We have a monthly professional development training with all of our mentors, gang focused and non, where we just teach new skills. For example, we recently did motivational interviewing training. We've gone and taken tours of JRC. We've had Voc Rehab come and talk to us about opportunities that can be provided for the kids. We also give the Choose Gang Free lessons for 5th graders to some of the more high-risk elementary schools in our district. The students are visited with weekly using Check and Connect. We do home visits. I try to make sure that we're visiting our students every quarter. I think that our mentors who are working specifically with gang prevention are seeing our kids in their homes a lot more frequently than that. They're doing home visits all the time. And then that parent communication is so key. And that's an expectation that we have, that there's weekly communication with parents. And then on the intervention side, we're doing those briefings that I talked about a little bit with Detective Mitchner. We have a Microsoft Teams group where we put our documentation on there so that he has access to that. Everybody just has a page, each student has a page, and we just add notes as it goes for things that we feel like we need to keep in contact with. We attend the gang conference, which has been so great to go to Metro Gang Units conference to teach us new ideas and new trends that are happening and things that we can look for. Something they really focused on a lot this year is females and their role in the gang. And so that really opened a lot of our minds to the roles that girls are playing. And we recently found a grant that focuses on female impact of trafficking, which is a huge connection to gang activity for girls. And so it's opened our minds to things like that. Transitional link between neighborhood school and safe school. So when our kids have a safe school violation and they have to go, we call it Roosevelt Continuation School. The mentors follow them to Roosevelt, continue their mentoring, and then follow them back to their neighborhood schools so that they don't have a gap in that positive person in their life. And I think that's been super, super important for us. And then linking us between other districts. We do a lot more work with other districts this year than we have in the past. And recently we got to have some training at the VETRA training. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, we were able to do, so April and I were able to go down to the Attorney General's office in Murray and do a training that the officers go through. And they're opening it up, and it's putting you in situations using a firearm, and what do you do and how do you de-escalate. And that was one of the coolest things I've ever done, is being able to do that and see how you work with also people on your team. And they've opened it up, so we're going to be taking all of our gang advocates to do this as well, where it's a police simulation and they have millions of different scenarios that could occur. So we're excited to do that this year.
Mm-hmm. We went the week before spring break, so we did it 2 weeks ago, 2.5. I've already used it twice, guys. It was a really good training. If you ever get a chance. One of the simulations was a situation where we were talking someone down, and I was meeting with a kid who does have a mentor. I was at Roosevelt, our safe school, and he was having a little bit of a breakdown, and I found myself saying some of the same sentences I said to the simulation, and I was like, oh, it worked. And we were able to start some de-escalation and able to communicate with law enforcement through that as well. But and then used it when I was teaching a conduct class the other day to some of our kids who have gone through safe school process as well. So it's been awesome to it's interesting how you connect with different people in different places, because there is such a zeal about gang prevention, because it is so important, and there's so many people who want to be on this team of helping kids to avoid this activity. And so that's one thing I've learned in this position. I've been doing this for 3 years, and there are so many good people wanting to help. So it's neat to be able to meet them when you're working together on this. Next slide, please.
So the next slide is how does the juvenile gang and other violent crime prevention and intervention supports, how do we pay for it? How do we get this into our schools? What we found this year is that the schools wanted some of these so much that they were willing to find the funding to help. So we split quite a few. We didn't update this one, but this is 50% of our Granite gang advocates are funded half by the schools, so 50% by the school and 50% by other funding. And we also have 2 hourly advocates that are funded. One of our mentors is 100% funded. That school felt that this was so important that they funded 100% of it. We do have others that focus on early prevention. We have 2 that do the Choose Gang Free 5th grade, and they're in the elementary schools because we're also realizing we need to get the prevention in earlier. And so we're doing a lot of the gang prevention in 5th grade, sometimes 4th, going into different schools. That need has been great. So that has been a fabulous program. We also have the Granite detective that is assigned to MGU. He is able to take what we talk about in the briefings to the Metro Gang Unit, and also vice versa, that he'll bring information and the info he can share with us about trends or things that are happening. We also use our funding for student incentives. We have found this year that there's things that the kids really need or want to work for. So we use that. We also use the funding for tuition. So we pay that for not tuition to like college, but tuition to pay for the gang conference, because we feel that this is a really important thing for our gang advocates to go to. And also anything that's a professional development, different trainings that we feel would help our mentors.
Mhm.
There is a comment in the chat. What's the training called and who is eligible? I think that was for your last slide that you discussed.
Yeah, so that VECTRA training at the Attorney General's office, the contact person, what is her name? Bush.
We will have to send, I don't have.
I'll
her
have
name.
to email that. I don't have her name off the top of my head. But they have, people from our department have gone in the past. So that's how that was set up, is that our director was able to talk to them and have us come and have that experience. And then once we went, something that we learned, so this is helpful if you want to set it up for your district. The training officers that are working in VETRA would really like to see SROs working with school staff. So if the mentor and the SRO can go, or mentor administrator SRO, that's something we're working on doing right now. But just out of respect for other people and their roles in the district, before we set up anything official, I did reach out to Chief Porter to make sure that we had his support when asking his people to join us with that. So I'll figure out the name of that person and I'll let you know. I could probably do that.
And I don't
before
think
the
there was a
summer.
cost to it. They just want people to come and experience. One of the groups that was before us, so we had 2 groups that split, and we had people from PTA. So they are taking volunteers. The person that I sat next to was from Utah State. So they take different areas in education, but also people that just are in the community. And yeah, there wasn't a cost to it.
Yeah. And it was interesting to see how, because it does build up your adrenaline. And so it was an interesting thing to see. Yeah, the only cost they talked about was the cost of breaking the taser if you dropped it. And because I'm a klutz, I volunteered to not hold the taser. So anyway, but that's something that, it was a really cool experience and it was a good thing to do. What it showed me most is that Sarah and I work really well together. As we worked through that simulation together, we were able to see how the work that we do together on a consistent basis is going to be helpful in a sticky situation. And it doesn't have to always be an active shooter sticky situation. It can be our kid who has come to, kid comes to me, tells me that he just earned the right in his gang to carry a piece and he's working on collections now. And if I know Sarah has experience with a kid going through this, then I know that I can go to her because I've already built that relationship of trust with her. And so I think that's the biggest thing it did for me, was to affirm the connection that we already have and to make sure that we can still do our guidance with our mentors well. So we're hoping that in taking our mentors that they'll have the same team building experience with each other and with our detective. So next slide, please, Amanda. We also cannot end any of our conversations about this without talking about the success stories that we've had. So when we documentation is so hard, and it just takes a lot of time, but it is so vital to have something written down. There's many times where I have been in safe school screening and we're thinking about sending a kid back into the neighborhood school or to safe school, and they're just not ready for one or the other. And so I look up our gang briefing notes all the time to see if there's something that can help people get more knowledge about these kids so that we can make good decisions for them and avoid some of the things that could be happening. Because we had reviewed gang briefing notes in one of our safe school screening meetings, we were able to avoid this huge fight in the park at one of our high schools. It was a fight where a few weapons were present. It was going to be a big deal, and school staff was able to get there with SROs before the fight even started. And so we were able to avoid that situation. I will skip the one about Taylorsville because that was Keelan. So we'll let Keelan talk about that. Wink, wink. And then at Cottonwood, we had a student who, and I just thought this was amazing, but we had a student who decided to play football. One of our mentors is the coach, one of the coaches of the football team. And he said to the kid, just come to practice, come play. And the kid was like, I have a 0.4 GPA. You know, I'm not playing. They're never going to play me. And although that's our mentor said, doesn't matter. Just come to practice. We'll work on it. Don't worry about that. We'll worry about your GPA later. And they kept working on it. He kept coming to practice. Less than a year later, the student has a 3.4 GPA that he's maintaining. He's playing on the football team, and he asked his dad, who is the shot caller for his gang, if he could get out, and dad said yes. If you're going to be successful at school, I'll let you out. And that to me, like, I don't care if I'm in this job for 500 years and that's the only success story that we have. We have a kid who was able to leave the gang and had parental support for that. And hopefully that kind of support continues. And I know that there are stories out there that I don't even realize are happening. But I do want to ask KB to talk now, but I also want to say before he starts, KB and Vince, another one of our mentors, and I went to one of our junior highs, and all they did was said they wanted to have a Q&A. And so I am going to encourage you all to ask whatever questions you have. We Q&A'd with the school for an hour and a half, and it was time well spent, because sometimes there are just things you wonder about gang prevention that you're unsure of. So KB, if you will share some success stories with us, and then we'll open it for any questions that you guys might have.
Okay. The parental contact shooting happened last year, where we actually had a situation where we were, I'm not sure if everybody even heard of it, but we actually had a shooting inside. We had a lockdown. Parent of the young man who came in, his dad came in and kind of didn't get along with admin at the time. So he grabbed his son and actually left. So what I did was did some research, called grandmother, got in contact with her, and was able to get dad on the phone. And was later on that afternoon, I was able to go and meet with them to make sure, we could get statements from them so we can get everything under control. Because at that point, at that time, the kid was being, he was, I guess, used as one of the suspects, but actually it turned out to be he was not a suspect. He was one of the victims. But yeah, after doing the home visit with the grandmother and father, who was able to get them to come in, write the statements and everything, and was able to kind of get everything under control after that point. So. Uh-oh.
You're on mute, my friend, April.
Yes, I know. Just talking to myself over here. Thank you, KB. Oh, sorry. Now my phone is ringing and you can probably hear that. I'll just cancel that. KB, what else would you like to share about experiences that you're having in gang prevention at the schools?
A lot of a lot of things that we are doing, like you said, Vince, myself, Alo, a couple of others, Brian, the guys at Hunter, we're dealing with a lot of kids who either are already fully invested into the gangs. So a lot of these young men and women are at the schools actively recruiting. So we're in this position to where now we're, like you said, trying to kind of keep it under control as far as not allowing so much recruiting to go on, because a lot of people don't really realize how big gang activity is here in Utah right now, and it's only growing. So the amount of work that we do to try to stop and, kind of interject and intervene in some of these recruiting activities, it takes a lot. And it not only takes a lot from us, but it takes away from even the kids that are here at the school, because there's a lot of disruption that comes with, kids who belong to gangs and they're here and sitting in the commons area, for example, speaking on that and getting the attention from other kids. So we deal with a lot, and we truly appreciate having bosses like Sarah and April who do pretty much everything that we pretty much either ask for or don't even ask for half the times, but they make sure we have it so we can be successful in what we do.
Thanks, KB. I think one of the most powerful things, and I will be a fan of Check and Connect until the day I die because of this. Instead of focusing only on get out of this gang, our focus is high school completion.
Mm-hmm.
We are focusing on that with our gang active youth, just like we are focusing on it with other kids. And there are a lot more steps that need to happen from where they are to that high school completion. Just last week, we had 3 kids graduate out at Connections.
Yeah, Connections. One was an early Cypress graduate.
Mm-hmm. So they're doing a great job. We had a mentor text us yesterday, thrilled because not only did her student graduate this week, but she got a full ride scholarship to Salt Lake Community College, and she is the mom of a 1-year-old and has lots of crazy experiences in her life that she's dealing with. But Check and Connect has given us the vehicle to guide our students in a positive way toward graduation, to give them someone positive to problem solve with, and to give us a format to be able to look at what the patterns of our students are. And so that is my main focus in what I do, is do the mentors have what they need from me? And are we fixing problem patterns that we're seeing in the kids in a positive way? And if I can say yes to those 2 questions, then I feel like it doesn't matter what else I've done in my day. If I've had a day where things have come up and my to-do list is now twice as long as it was at the beginning of the day, and I feel like I didn't do anything that is in my job description. If I can answer yes to do my mentors have what they need, and are we successfully seeing and working with the patterns that our kids are showing, then fine. It doesn't matter. It was a day well spent. And so I love that Check and Connect is our vehicle for that. So there is my Check and Connect soapbox. Does anyone have any questions for us?
Friends, this is your opportunity. Come off mute or pop it in the chat. You've got experts here and boots on the ground to answer questions. I do see some typing, so we'll see what pops up in the bubble here.
And I can give you my email and phone too.
So there's a question. Does getting
Yes.
a new name indicate they may be joining a gang?
Yeah, monikers are really big with our students right now. And so they do often use a different name than the one that they are given at birth. And sometimes they make a lot of sense and sometimes they don't make any sense at all. One of our hugely active gangs right now is Dogtown. And some of their names are dog related names, not all of them, but we were having a good giggle at that the other day. Because we have like, what was it? Mini Pit.
Little ones.
Yeah, Boxer and Little Boxer, they're brothers. And so we were having a good laugh about their name being Boxer and its relation to Dogtown. But they do often have monikers that they will use, and that is really difficult to keep up with when we have our gang prevention meetings. So what we do to kind of combat that is we always attach their student number and their birthday to everything that we document so that we know that we're talking about the same student. Because sometimes different students in different gangs will have the same moniker. And so it can get really confusing. That was my very long way of saying yes.
I think that was all very important though, because there's little intricacies into all of this conversation.
Yes,
so I think
absolutely.
the next comment was, do you offer professional development to other school districts outside, or how can they access this in the future?
At this point, it's been really casual. So we've been contacted by a district further north than us. And all they did was they just called and said, we don't know what to do. We know that there's a situation. We heard that you guys are doing a good job. Can we learn more about it? And we said yes. And they came down on a Wednesday. We talked to them about what we do. We show them the documentation method that we use. And then they stayed for one of our meetings with our mentors and our police officer just to see how that went. We've done that with 2 districts now this year, and we just take it on a case-by-case basis. So I'll put my contact information in the chat. And if you're interested in that, we are happy to share what we're doing. And, you know, if it's being successful for us and it can be successful for you too, then we definitely don't want to keep that a secret.
And
Thank
some
you so
people that
much for
we've
that.
brought in too, like the guy that does the motivational interviewing for us, that was one that it was a 3-week, ended up, we had to do 3 different weeks and then just break it up because it's an 8-hour training. But that was phenomenal and really beneficial for the mentors. And especially when he started understanding exactly what we do, and the stories and how the mentors could relate that to exactly what they're doing right now. We can give the names of the people that come in. Most of the time, it's just we're finding outside resources to come in and do some of these PD that we do. But yeah, we're happy if there's something that you've heard that you're like, hey, who did that? Or who, you know, was it you guys? Was it somebody else? We're happy to give you that information as well.
I love it. From my perspective, it just doesn't get any better than this. Watching you all collaborate and work together across districts to support our students, like, this is it. This is what we're here for, folks. So, and I love that Check and Connect provides that framework for us all to work together and speak the same language. So please reach out to April. I know I do, obviously, as I asked her to present today, but April is just a fantastic resource. And if you ever need a Check and Connect cheerleader and I'm not available, April's your gal.
Yeah, I will totally be that cheerleader.
All right, so it looks like we've got the contact information in the chat. Just make sure I didn't miss anything else. And earlier, Sarah had popped that website in there about, I think that's probably the crisis shooter situation.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the police simulation. So if you just wanted to see what it looked like or what they do, that kind of it shows you a video. They basically have 5 screens and you're shooting, not real. It is a virtual, so you do have but you are using a real weapon. So you have like a Glock that has that's a laser, but you've got 5 giant screens and you're constantly having to look. And then you've got, just like the police have, where they have dispatch calling in. So there's a lot of different simulations, and, you know, outside, inside, in a library, at a school, that they'll take you through.
So I had the opportunity to do that myself, and I highly recommend you work with your SROs and see if that's something you can do as well. It's probably here along the Wasatch Front. I do want to add that little disclaimer to the conversation. I don't know that statewide we have these resources, but I know up here in Salt Lake, there's at least 1 or 2 facilities that have these simulators available. But reach out to your SRO and see what's available locally. You know, maybe they don't have virtual screens, but they might have conversations or different trainings at your local police enforcement.
Well, yeah, and the conversation part of that was huge. We were able to learn, because we spent half of the time in a little training. They were talking about teaching people the will to survive, talked about an officer from about 7 years ago who was shot 9 times down in Moab, lived through that experience. And one thing he said was practice is so important because your body cannot go where your mind has not been. And I've used that with 4 kids in the last 2 weeks. I've been able to talk to them about that. Oh, you made that. Why did you make that choice? I don't know. It just happened. I don't know. Well, your body can't go where your mind has not been. In what ways have you taken your mind to a positive place when you've had a challenge? And so it's been nice to be able to do that. And I don't know. It's just, it's a great opportunity to see other people. And at that training, we also met someone who's doing some trafficking training, and they needed a practice group. So we volunteered our mentors to be their practice group.
Never-ending collaborations.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I mean, it's true. That's how we all learn from each other. So absolutely.
Yep, absolutely. Well, sorry, we're ending so early. If
I
there's
was just gonna say, I will either tell everybody we can have some time back in our day, or you do have an opportunity to ask a question if you want to do it verbally and not on chat. That's always okay. Give it just another moment here before we call it a morning.
If you do email and you don't hear back from me, double check your email. Sometimes my name autocorrects to above@graniteschools.org.
We love autocorrect.
Yeah.
And I will share that out in my follow-up email as well. So if you didn't have a chance to capture it because you're multitasking, I will share that out as well. We do have a question. Do kids get in trouble with their gangs if they talk to, well, if we talk to them?
My perspective on this might be a little different from Keelan's. In general, our kids are not afraid to talk to us. They're happy to share some information. And when they're closed mouth, we're pretty respectful about it. What has been your experience, Keelan?
We've had no issues here as far as older gang members getting mad when kids are talking to us. I truly believe, just like what we're doing, helping them, they want the kids to be a little smarter and actually graduate so they can actually help that gang. So as far as them getting mad once they find out they're working with Check and Connect members, it really doesn't affect anything.
So our mentors are safe to work with our kids, it sounds like.
Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't feel very threatening at all. In fact, we have a lot of kids who will reach out to their mentors on weekends or during spring break and things like that. We had one, and I don't know why I didn't share this in the success stories, because I think it's a gigantic success, but we had a gang active student call his mentor over Christmas break and said, "Hey, I'm planning to commit homicide. You gonna stop me?" Yeah, we're gonna stop you. So mentor grabbed the detective and they went and did some home visits, and they were able to avoid a sticky situation. But yeah, if you're willing to call us and tell us that that is your plan and that's the assignment that you were given and you want help to stop, then And from what I know, there have not been any negative ramifications for that kid from his gang.
And that's where I know our relationships in our schools, like you guys touched on earlier, knowing your SRO and knowing your administrators and who to go to in these scenarios is just going to be so beneficial.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that I get called and looped in on things and can be supportive, but when it comes right down to it, they don't need me. They knew exactly what to do to help that kid because they had a strong relationship with the student.
Well, friends, I'm not seeing anything else in the chat, so I think we will go ahead and have 10 minutes back in our day. I know we're all horribly busy people, so I'm sure we can all use it. But Sarah, April, and is it Keelan? Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you for your time. I know I always learn something new, and I love the collaboration Granite has had between the YIC and gang prevention and other prevention mentors, since you all have your own mentor army. So it's just, this is such a great example of what's already happening in schools. So like we talked about earlier, reach out, ask questions, learn from each other. If there's connections I can help make, please let me know. So I hope, thank you. Hope you all have a wonderful Wednesday afternoon, and I will see you all again in May for one more webinar this school year.
Woo-hoo. Thank you.
Thank you.